Hey everyone, it's Pineapple, and today we're going to talk about the end of Overhaul story in My Hero Academia. We're going to be talking, of course, about Kai Chisaki, where I think his story is going to be going from here. And of course, we're doing this because we're continuing our series in talking about the end of certain character arcs in My Hero Academia as we get closer towards the ending, when the series ends at some point at the end of this year, or like maybe the beginning of next year, but it's ending soon. We have word from Horikoshi. So if you haven't catched my previous video in the series, we've already done Dabi, Endeavor, Toga, a couple other characters. You can check that out in the playlist above. And I just thought I'd mention to you guys, because this is kind of a recent thing, honestly, I'm partnered with Gamersups. This is the pineapple cocktail flavor, and I'm partnered with them. Obviously, if you go to the link in my description and click on it, you can get a free sample no matter where you are in the United States. I believe it kind of extends beyond the United States, but I'm not 100% sure. But you can get a free sample on me. I think it comes with like 4 flavors, right? And if you get a shaker or anything like that, or anything that you buy, it does support the channel a little bit. So that's one of the best ways that you can support me, by clicking the link, going through here. And you know, I'm really happy to have the relationship that I do have right now with Gamersubs. Everything's been going really smooth. I feel like I have a lot of freedom as a creator. So hopefully, if you guys like this stuff, and if you guys do like your sample sizes and do end up getting stuff, maybe one day we can show them, like, you know, we have enough buyers that we can maybe get a vocal pineapple cocktail or something like that. I feel like maybe I'd add mango or passion fruit or something. Let me know in the comment section below. That's kind of my question to you guys. Like, if we did have a Gamersubs flavor, like, what would you want it to be? Clearly, pineapple's probably going to be in. You want like pineapple coconut mango, or like some interesting fruits, dragon fruit, anything in there? Let me know. You know, we're a long way off from anything like that happening, but that really depends on you guys, I feel like. So maybe we're not. Maybe we're closer than I think. But I really want to know what kind of flavors you'd want to have if we did have our own Gamersubs flavor. And final thing, of course, is I would really appreciate it if you subscribe and like the video. Of course, liking the video really helps us out. And if everyone who watched my videos that isn't subscribe today, we would have over 300,000 subscribers, right? So we're trying to hit that number before the end of the year. I'm very back and focused and goal oriented, you know, after having a little bit of a break on YouTube. So we're back, we're focused. Hopefully I'm showing you guys my new uploads and my new upload schedule. I'm uploading nearly every day, you know, that we're here with it. We're here, we got the content. So let's start talking about the end of Overhaul story of My Hero Academia. Let's get straight to it. And do I think it's possible for Chisaki to defeat All for One? That is what we're going to cover. Not just if he could just beat him in a straight up fight. We're going to go a different route with it. So stick around and let's see what that is. So I guess to cover the end of Overhaul story, like I do with every other character, I have to kind of go back a tiny little bit and just discuss what has been happening with Overhaul in the story since we last saw him, right? So if you remember, Overhaul was reintroduced, or Kai Chisaki was reintroduced to the story back during the prison break section of the story, actually. We got a quick look at him. We got a quick look at a new prisoner, a female with short hair. We got a look at, you know, some characters that we know from the past, like Moonfish, Muscular, little stuff like that. And it was all going on right as All for One was getting ready to pretty much break himself out of prison using Shigaraki, right? That kind of from the inside and from the outside method of, you know, breaking down Tartarus, right? So once Chisaki was freed from Tartarus, we know that he still couldn't really do anything. Because if you remember, at the end of the Overhaul arc, we had this very kind of brief, like almost My Villain Academia style section of the villains committing an operation where pretty much they wanted to get rid of Overhaul's hands and steal the Quirk Erasing Bullets that Overhaul had made before that point. And those Quirk Erasing Bullets will sort of play a slightly important role next season, right? They will come back into play in My Hero Academia Season 6. But as far as we know, I don't think there are any Quirk Erasing Bullets left. There might be one, if memory serves me. There might be one Quirk Erasing Bullet left, but I don't think there are any more Quirk Erasing Bullets. And obviously without Eri, I don't think there's really a real clear path for the potential to make more, right? But that's kind of where we're going to start off with this discussion on where Overhaul's story could go in My Hero Academia, because often when we look back, we find out things that the characters have done that might set them up for the future of what they're going to continue to do before the series ends. And with Overhaul, one of the biggest things that we know that he's responsible for in the world of My Hero Academia is actually the creation of the Quirk Erasing Bullets. So that's my first question I'm going to pose to you guys. Do you think Overhaul could guide someone, or maybe even himself somehow, guide someone in the creation of new Quirk Erasing Bullets, or maybe at least Quirk Dampening Bullets? Maybe he can't get the same kind of efficacy that he had before, right, without Eri or anything like that, and obviously we're not going to subject Eri to the same stuff that she was going through before just to make some bullets. Do you think it's possible for Chisaki to make something, kind of something along those lines, if he could guide someone else? Or is it that his quirk is very much an important part of doing that, right? And I guess the question kind of further goes to, do you think there's any way, any reason allowable, and any possible path that they would allow Chisaki to get his hands back. You know what I mean? Because there was a thing going around during the Ultra Analysis data book. I have to get the English version and see if this is in there anywhere. So take this with a grain of salt, but there was a bit of a thing in the Ultra Analysis data book. I remember when it was fan translated that apparently Overhaul had his quirk remodeled somehow, partially, in Tartarus, right? Like maybe it was just that they fixed like the nubs on his arms, you know what I mean? They're not fixed because they're not arms again, but you know, they kind of like cleaned that up a little bit on both of his arms. But there was allegedly some sort of event or something that happened with Overhaul's quirk when he was within Tartarus prison, right? And I don't know how much credence we can lend that. I haven't really heard much about that after the English Ultra Analysis book came out, if it even is out. I'm pretty sure it is. But we have to assume to a certain extent Chisaki either can't use his quirk or is refusing to use his quirk because maybe there was like a high degree of control that he needed and he could only get that with his hands, so he's not willing to like use it now with his nubs or use it now with his feet or wherever he could possibly use it. Because if you remember, I do think we saw in My Villain Academia, unless I'm wrong, right, I feel like we did see what seemed like cracks coming from the ground under Shigaraki's feet. So that kind of opens the door for whether or not it's possible for other characters who have like hand-based quirks, right? That kind of leaves the question open as to whether they can have their quirks spread to like other areas of their bodies or other extremities. Like, you know, Chisaki would be able to use Overhaul from his feet basically, but maybe like since he's been training with his hands his whole life, he doesn't have anywhere near the same level of control that he did on his hands, so he just decides not to. I'm not going to do that because what if I blow my feet off? What if I fuse off the ground and I can't undo it? Like, it's kind of like a weird variable. The only way that I can see Chisaki maybe being able to do anything is by somehow making amends with Eri. And I don't know if that's possible, right? But we do know if there's one character that can kind of get Chisaki back to normal, kind of fix him to a certain extent, that would be Eri, right? Eri could just definitely rewind him back to the point that he was at back during the Overhaul arc, just like she did to Mirio just a couple weeks prior to the story we're in right now. And she could definitely fix Overhaul back up, but like, one, would Eri want to do that ever, right? Would she ever want to see that man again? And would anyone who cares for Eri ever bring her around that man again? And two, what would Chisaki do in that situation, right? You're pretty much back to full power. Eri's within your reach. Do you just go villain again and kind of like, screw this, screw all this stuff going on in Japan, I'm kidnapping Eri again and we're gonna, you know, go back to square one? Or do you really change under a new leaf? You know what I mean? Or do you really change? I guess is my question. Because previously in manga, we have seen characters that it seemed like this person is never gonna change and never gonna come back from where they are currently. But I wonder if Overhaul could have a very Kabuto from like Naruto style moment where he really sits and realizes the error of his ways and like is shown a little bit of grace. You know what I mean? Like definitely not as much grace as Kabuto got in Naruto. I feel like him running the shelter or whatever he did, it was kind of like crazy for all the stuff that he did. Like he did Edo Tensei and kind of started the whole war arc to a certain extent, allowing Overhaul to like serve a purpose, right? Serve a purpose one more time. I feel like that would be an interesting thing to see in My Hero Academia. I don't know if it's okay to like have Eri rewind him or anything like that to make another Quirk Erasing Bullet. Maybe he doesn't have to break her down and like unbreak her to do it. He just has to like take a little piece of her horn or something for one Quirk Erasing Bullet. What are your thoughts on Overhaul somehow making amends to Eri, right? Because I know it seems a little ridiculous. I know none of us want him to be able to do that because he is Eri's abuser. You know what I mean? You probably want to keep her away from him at all costs. But Deku did have that little statement to Overhaul, right? Where he was like, hey, like, I know you probably have something you have to do, your boss or whatever the hell like that. You have to go fix him. But like, before you even think about doing that, you really need to think about how you could apologize to Eri. You know what I mean? Like, before you think about what you did to this guy who gets to sleep peacefully through whatever you did to him, think about what you did to Eri and how her whole life we're going to be unwinding that trauma of what you did, right? And think about how to make amends to her first before you think about making amends to anyone else. It was really kind of like spicy Deku getting at Overhaul in a way that I really agreed with, right? So it seems like the door is kind of left open. I was wondering if in the Vigilante Deku arc we were going to get something out of that, like Overhaul and Deku maybe going to see the boss or some sort of situation, but I don't know if that happened, right? Or maybe if it did, we'll just get it in flashback form, like all the important stuff happens nowadays in My Hero Academia. But for the sake of continuing Overhaul's story, let's say he did somehow regain his arms, he did somehow make amends to Eri and save his boss, and he was able to just take a small piece of Eri's horn, or you know, or something maybe in his lab that he already had, and was able to make another Quirk Erasing Bullet. What would that do? You know what I mean? Is he just gonna run around with a Glock and try to take down All For One or try to take down Shigaraki? I don't really think that's it. What I honestly think is gonna happen, I think Horikoshi is really, really smart for this. Horikoshi introduced a character who is a sniper. If you remember in the Prison Break arc, obviously when we see Chisaki reintroduced, he is paired with a character named Lady Nagant, or Lady Nagant, right? And Lady Nagant is actually this pro-hero, ex-sniper kind of character who was put away because she was a tool for the Hero Public Safety Commission, and she was doing very dirty-handed things. Pretty much, Lady Nagant was put away and hidden within Tartarus to never be seen again, and then she breaks free and starts taking All For One's commands to take down Deku. And she's given an extra quirk that really pairs well with her sniper abilities. But yeah, we see in the Vigilante Deku arc, or the Villain Hunt arc, or whatever you want to call it, that she has this very, very intense sniper battle with Deku, where he has to pretty much break through buildings and do all sorts of stuff using his various quirks to get to her and eventually take her down. And by taking her down, if you remember, Deku kind of makes her change sides right at the very end of the fight. And to a certain extent, All For One knew this was going to happen, so because of that, he plants a remote detonation quirk inside of Lady Nagant, and we see her pretty much explode, but barely survive, thanks to Hawks and thanks to all of their work, right? They probably sent her to Central Hospital, the magic hospital in My Hero Academia, with all the Dr. Mario and, you know, Mario references. And it seems likely to me that she's going to survive. They said she'd probably have a long recovery time, but to me, you don't introduce a character like Lady Nagant and not have her come back somehow later in the story, right? Especially when her story is like of always being used, of never being able to do things that she wanted to do, and always being kind of convinced that this was the right way, this is the right path. Much like every villain we've seen so far in My Hero Academia that works under All For One, right? That's kind of his MO. And then eventually that continuing under All For One, and because of her changing sides and because of Deku and everything like that, showing her some grace and telling her that she can still be a hero, she then should play an important role in the final arc, right? So I think what Horikoshi did is he shelved Lady Nagant, right? He didn't want Lady Nagant just running around and being an obvious part of the hero's final plan. He wants to kind of put her in the background, but she is to a certain extent tied with Chisaki, right? Who, if you remember, when he showed up, he really only showed up and started acting because All For One was like in prison, and that's when he started to feel comfortable about like, okay, now is my time to take over. So I feel like as part of Lady Nagant's character, who was used by All For One and had to pretty much go back to the hero side, but was thrown away and likely put towards near death with that explosion, while keeping in mind that she's a sniper. And then you also have Chisaki, or Overhaul, right, who before only felt comfortable acting in the absence of All For One, but is now maybe able to subvert All For One via his use of creating Quirk Erasing Bullets, because he's a bullet maker. When you pair those two, it feels like there's only one real way that it can go, right? I think that there's no way that Nagant doesn't shoot All For One with a Quirk Erasing Bullet, right? That seems like the obvious thing to do. You have a sniper and you have a bullet maker. So of course at some point you have to have the bullet maker make a special bullet for the sniper to use against their shared enemy, right? And if there's anything that I know that Nagant is gonna want revenge on All For One, but if All For One gets defeated in this war arc, there's not really gonna be room for her to do that, right? So what is the biggest detriment to All For One you could possibly think of? I think it's losing All For One the quirk itself. And I think that happening because of his own planning, right? I feel like a lot of the bad stuff that's about to happen to All For One is all because of his own poor planning, right? His planning seemed so perfect, but there were little areas where things didn't go the way that he expected because of his own hubris, because he was so sure that they were going to go exactly the way that he expected, that he left little kind of blank spaces while not accounting for Deku and not accounting for various other characters in the series to be as hard-headed as they are, and for people to see him as a manipulator that he is. I think all of those things are going to combine into a massive failure for All For One, and one of those last things could definitely be accidentally leaving Lady Nagant alive, right? Not packing enough explosive or whatever he did in her body with the quirk that he used, not doing enough to truly get rid of her, and in the first place, using her at all, right? Like, that was truly the biggest mistake. And I like the idea of All For One using people coming back to bite him in the butt. So obviously, I really like the idea of Lady Nagant and Chisaki coming together to really hit in the last nail of the coffin in All For One's life, right? So, of course, if you follow the channel, you know that to a certain extent, I do think Deku and All For One are going to have like a tug of war inside of One For All and All For One inside their little vestige space, where Deku is going to go in to save Shigaraki, and he's going to try to pretty much do the same thing that Star and Stripe did, but using the vestiges of One For All to fight all the various different quirk users inside of Shigaraki and All For One himself, and then freeing Tenko. But one way to make that easier definitely would be to hit Shigaraki with a Quirk Erasing Bullet, right? Like, I wonder if that would undo some of the mental processes that are going on inside of his body. Alternatively, I think hitting All For One himself with a Quirk Erasing Bullet would really, maybe it wouldn't take effect immediately, right? Like, I guess that's kind of a question. Like, do you think hitting All For One with a Quirk Erasing Bullet would get rid of All For One and all of his quirks? Or would it just get rid of one quirk that he has? But I honestly think it would work very much like Aizawa's, you know, quirk denying vision, right? That like, when applied to a person, it gets rid of all of their quirks and all their abilities, right? So I feel like that's how the Quirk Erasing Bullet will work on All For One, but I do think, just for dramatic tension, that it would take a little while. Like, it would take a while to get through all the quirks and delete all of them before it got to the main one. And I think that would kind of give you like a gradual decline in All For One's strength, unless he just starts bugging out and trying to finish everything as fast as he can, and maybe that makes him a little more dangerous for a little bit, like a caged animal or a cornered animal. I do think that Lady Nagant and Chisaki are going to come into play again, and that is going to be the end of Overhaul's story in My Hero Academia, that he is going to make amends to a certain extent by being there and being one of the ones that helps defeat All For One, even if people don't know that he did that, right? Because I'm sure right now the plan is probably to like overwhelm All For One. I don't know if the heroes are aware of Nagant's presence in this plan or Chisaki's role in this plan, but let's say they are. I think the plan is to overwhelm All For One with all the various different heroes. He thinks everyone is here, so he doesn't have to use his search quirk to look around or anything, but let's say he even does use his search quirk. I think the plan is to overwhelm All For One and then let Lady Nagant from a ridiculous distance away. A distance that's so far away that maybe All For One uses his search quirk and sees, and he's like, there's no way that whoever that is over there, that's Lady Nagant, yeah, she's way too far away to pose a threat to me. You know what I mean? She's all the way at Central Hospital. She's all the way somewhere way far away. I don't have to worry about her. Even if she shoots a bullet at me, I'm All For One. I'll regenerate. I'll be fine, right? I can dodge it. I can do anything. And then I think in that moment, All For One is going to get distracted, or All For One is going to get held down by Endeavor or something. And I think Lady Nagant is going to hit All For One from a ridiculous distance with a Quirk Erasing Bullet, because she's a sniper, so it would just be perfect. And again, Overhaul entered the story talking about how All For One failed and talking about All For One's failure at Camino, right? So I feel like him causing All For One's failure here, or playing a role in it at least, would definitely be very, very fitting for his character, just from like a narrative sense. So all in all, my questions are, do you think that Overhaul is going to be reintroduced into the story one last time before the arc ends? Do you think Lady Nagant is going to come back into the story? And do you think she's going to shoot one of Overhaul's Quirk Erasing Bullets through her arm at All For One to get rid of all For One's quirks and make him pretty much the most normal he's ever been in his entire life, right? Like, I could imagine how everyone is going to jump All For One. It's going to be like that JoJo meme, right? Telling them to fight back while he has no quirk and everything. I would love to see All For One get hoodie ragged, honestly. So hopefully we can see it, or I guess like dress shirt ragged. You know, they just start beating him up. I would love to see it, but do you think Overhaul is going to play a role in that? That is what I ultimately think the end of Overhaul's story is going to be in My Hero Academia. And yeah, let me know what you guys think of that. This is Pineapple. Tell me in the comment section who you want me to talk about next, if I like the character, or if I feel like I have like an interesting angle to talk about them, or where their character could possibly be going. I'll talk about them next. But so far, this is Pineapple. This is the end of this video, and I'll see you guys later. Please like and subscribe again.